Hey, what is going on, guys? XpertFusion here, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 15 of the Walking Dead Telltale TV Adaptation series. This episode is titled Just Like Them. So we know last episode ended off with Walter getting captured by Carver by the shed where Matthew was at because Walter was looking for Matthew's dead body. So we know that's happening. We know back at House that the prisoners are still, there. Everything's going on how it was before. Wyatt obviously got himself captured, and they were attacked by the killers, and Troy captured one of the killers and put them in this cell. So this episode starts off at nighttime. So this episode is going to basically, the entirety of it is going to be during night. So just imagine these scenes being at night. Troy drags the leftover killer into the main torture cell, and he tells Sawyer to move Roman over to the main cells because Roman was obviously in the torture room the whole time. As Troy sits this man down on a chair, this man's name is Sean, so that's his name. Troy punches the guy in the face and tells him to talk. As this is happening, Carver is also interrogating Walter in Matthew's shed, so we're getting two interrogation scenes basically at the same time. Carver asks Walter who he's with, as he says he's by himself. Back with Troy, Sean tells Troy that he'll never betray his people. Troy takes tweezers and starts to pull off one of his fingernails. Sean is screaming in pain. Those in the cell wonder what the hell is happening as Roman is barely breathing as he gets up. Omid asks if he's alright, and Roman says that whenever someone comes in here to bring him out next, he's going to attack them. And if he succeeds, they can all just get the hell out of here after he is able to take this guy down. He says he might as well because they're not going to kill me anyways. So he basically goes over that game plan with everyone. Roman says, since they're not going to kill him, that's why they should do that. Shell is mourning Becca as they bury her in the woods nearby. Vince and Shell do this as they head back, and on their way back, they take a good look at the factory as Shell notices a pen-like area that is caged in with a metal fence and barbed wire around the side of the camp. And she asks what they use that for because it's abandoned, there's no one in there. Back at the lodge, Luke tries to walk, but he's struggling because obviously he hurt his foot last episode, and sits on watch as Darius questions why Walter is taking so long. Kenny and Sarita cuddle in their bed. Kenny's the happiest he's been in a long time. Clem shows Sarah how to shoot in her bedroom. She obviously doesn't shoot the gun itself, but Clem shows her how to load it and use the safety and all that good stuff. Sarah gets kind of nervous holding it, but Clem says it isn't loaded as she tries to show her how to carry it correctly. Carlos comes by and knocks on the door as Clem quickly hides the gun. They let Carlos in. Carlos is surprisingly not mad that she's with Clem, but Sarah just says that they were just talking about girl stuff, and Carlos says it's fine as he walks off. Clem is curious, so he follows up with Carlos and asks why he isn't mad that she's with her daughter now. Carlos says he didn't really trust her before, but he thinks he can now. And he agrees that she needs a friend her age, so he's fine with it. Rebecca and Alvin talk about what happens if Carver finds them, and Rebecca says all he wants is her. So if it comes to that, then he needs to let her go, and Alvin says he never will. Back at the shed, Carver continues to beat up Walter as he tells one of his men to watch him as they search the area. The others follow Carver outside as Lily leaves a water bottle for Walter. She tells the one guy that was supposed to stay there to watch Walter to let Walter drink some of the water, and the guy doesn't really care, so he says, yeah, sure, whatever. Back at House, Bonnie is hella busy with over 6 people injured from the killers in her infirmary. The death of Ella is hitting her hard with all this work piled up on top of her. She is completely full of anxiety and stress. Irene and Enrique come in to help, but they have no idea what they're doing, but they help anyways. Vince checks on Dave, who is sitting by himself in the courtyard. Dave starts blaming himself and saying he should have saw that there were people outside with guns, and Vince tells him that blaming himself won't help anyone. Vince tells him about the time he blamed himself for his girlfriend's death when she killed herself, but he can't do that to himself. It's just, we don't get to. Back at the lodge, Luke basically forces himself to walk, and he actually kind of can do it now, but he's limping a bit. Darius says he's going to head out to go find Walter. Nick says he'll come, and he says it's the right thing to do. That's why he wants to come. Luke says he'll come as well, but Nick says with your leg you shouldn't, and Luke says he's already getting used to walking on it, but he ends up getting tired out and then has to sit back down. Clem says she'll go, and Kenny tries to stop her and tells her it's not safe. Kenny seems quite demanding about this, but Clem tells him that he hasn't seen her out there and she's learned. She knows how to fight. Kenny says that he's coming too, but Sarita doesn't like the sound of that. Kenny said he's fine walking. He's fine now. He can walk. The group is settled. Kenny, Clem, Nick, and Darius head out down the mountain and down the trail to find Walter. Back at house, Troy and Sawyer continue torturing Sean until he decides to say that his people will be back. He says that was just an attack to show you what they can do and what they will do, but they'll be back in time. Troy walkies his army and tells him to double up on security around the perimeter 24/7. Shell goes exploring through the camp. She finds the entrance to the pen room that is fenced in like a big cage, and no one is in it, but she finds a drawing on the floor of a little girl and her father, and it looks just like Carlos and Sarah. Troy brings the prisoners some food in their cells, as they do twice a day, but he doesn't open the cell at all, so Roman doesn't have a chance to run out. It's usually just leftovers from the dining hall. The food, that is. Aaron continues to try to bargain with Troy. He tells Troy that he isn't like the others here. That he's a good guy, and he can see that. Troy isn't as pissed and angry as he usually gets when the prisoners try talking to him. Instead, he just says that this is Carver's orders. It's too risky to put them to work right now, so, all their guards need to be on security for this impending attack. He finishes the conversation off by saying that he is just like them. It's still nighttime, of course, and the group head looking for Walter down the trail using flashlights. Clem notices a flashlight in the distance when they're down the trail as she whispers for them to all hide in the bushes. They do this and they shut off their flashlights and stay as quiet as possible. The people walk by, which includes Carver, Lily, and some of his men. The group stay as quiet as possible in the bushes. It's quite a tense scene, and they don't move a muscle. Carver sees a walker coming as he takes it out with his knife, and they move on. Back at the shed, Walter tries to talk to the man into letting him go, and the man isn't having it. He says the more he talks, the less of a chance he's going to live. He tells Walter that he really doesn't need him alive, and that he can just tell Carver that you tried to attack me. He can shoot him in the head right now if he really wants to. Walter is tied with a rope from behind his back. Two walkers approach the shed and start knocking on it. He was just going to let them knock and just not deal with it, but one of them ends up breaking through a piece of wood on the door to the shed, so the man has to get up and take the walkers out. As he opens the door, Walter quickly gets up and rushes at the man and pushes him into the two walkers, so the walkers start eating the man alive. Walter is now able to run out of there, but some more walkers come from around the area into the shed. Walter leaves the shed on foot and heads back down the trail as tons of walkers tear Carver's man apart and some follow behind towards Walter. Carver and his people make it to the lodge as they get to cover and spy on the place. Carver uses binoculars and he notices Rebecca in the window. He smiles and says, "We fucking got them." Kenny and the others in the woods discuss who that was, and Kenny says it was definitely Carver. He heard the voice. Nick agrees. Darius says he has to go back to his people, and Kenny calms him down and says they have to play this smart. He says there was maybe 5 of them. They aren't stupid. They won't attack the lodge with just 5 of them. They take it slow, from a different way, and see what's happening. Walter comes running down the trail while still being tied up, with a walker herd coming from behind within the distance. Clem says, "Holy shit." They decide to start running through the woods that lead up the mountain through a different direction other than the way that Carver and his people went. The walkers follow. Nick gets Walter untied. They come across a bunch of rocks leading up the hill that they have to climb up on. The group start climbing up as walkers follow behind. Kenny is kind of limping a little bit, so it's not really easy for him to get up these rocks. Carver and his people turn back after spying on the lodge for a bit. Those climbing up the rocks continue as Walter is almost bitten, as he almost falls down into the walkers down below, beneath the rocks. They continue through the woods, though, after they all get up safely, and they make it back to the lodge. They don't see Carver's people anywhere, so they decide to just head into the lodge. When they return in, Walter tells everyone what happened as Carlos helps Walter out since he is obviously severely injured from Carver's people. Alvin says they can't stick around here if Carver's nearby, and tells them that they're all in danger now. If Carver saw them with them, then of course they can't stay here either. The group hear gunshots from outside. Anne takes a peek and sees Carver with Lily and 3 other guys all aiming guns at the house. Carver yells out for them to come out now. Back at house, Shell continues searching around the camp. She is in the pen, and she climbs up a ladder to get on top of the roof, and she goes over to the factory and peeks through the window to see the factory. She goes back to the room and tells Vince what she saw. Shell says she has a bad feeling about whatever the hell is in there, and she says they need to get Bonnie and leave. She doesn't want to even bother seeing what it is because it could be too dangerous. Reggie ends up coming in and asks what's up, as Shell tells Reggie what their plan is and what's happening with this full factory deal. Reggie says he thought it would come to this, so he pulls out a gun on them and he ends up yelling for help because obviously he's only got one arm, so he doesn't really want to do this all by himself. Vince and Shell are quite confused and tell him to chill out, as Shell tries to talk him out of whatever he's doing. Reggie says he was hired to make sure they weren't going to be a problem. That's why he was in the same room as them. That's why he was sleeping in the same room as them. That he was hired by Carver to make sure that they didn't find out what was happening in there, and if they did, he needed to do something about it. He says he's sorry. 2 guards come running in and take Vince and Shell. Reggie says to bring them to Troy in the cells. Bonnie, Enrique, and Irene get a moment to breathe in the infirmary as everyone is okay, as Enrique leaves for air. Reggie tells Enrique about Vince and Shell. Enrique ain't happy about it. You can tell he doesn't like the system Carver has in place. Enrique says they need Bonnie for her medical abilities, so they can't take her in too. Bonnie questions where the others are as she comes over, and Reggie says he doesn't know. Troy throws Shell and Vince into the cell just as Roman runs at Troy, but he completely fails. He just collapses onto the floor. He's way too beaten. So that was a failure. And he says he doesn't know what Carver's going to do with all of them, but what he does know is that he can't just let them go. The cells are full with Aaron, Tavia, Omid, Wyatt, Molly, Roman, Vince, Shell, and 3 other redshirts. So the cells are jam-packed right now. And that's obviously going to be a problem with Carver because, he doesn't want too many prisoners. He doesn't want to have to deal with that many people to have to look over like that. Back at the lodge, the group all hide in the house as Walter says he'll confront them himself. He says that obviously Carver knows he's there, so he'll just talk to him, maybe talk him out of it. He goes outside with his hands up. He tells Carver that he's sorry, but he didn't want to stay in a shed while being beaten. He says he saw Rebecca, or Carver says he saw Rebecca, and so he knows she's in there. Carver fires another shot and says walkers will come. So the longer they take, the harder it'll be for Carver to do this. He says he doesn't really want Walter. He just wants Rebecca and her group. He says he can leave and be safe, but he just has to help him get to them safely. Carver says he would just barge in, but he's not getting himself into a trap if there is one. Carver yells out loud this time, and he says that if anyone else is in the house and they want to leave without being killed, he recommends they come out now. Anne and Darius are the only ones really not hiding completely. They're kind of just in the living room behind the couch. And they hear this. Anne says they should just go. Darius tries to stop Anne, but she says she doesn't want to die. So she goes outside, and Darius doesn't follow, though. Carver is surprised to see someone actually come outside. Anne tells Carver to just let his people go, and they'll be fine. Carver thanks her for her bravery, and then he shoots her in the head. Just pulls out his revolver and pops Anne in the skull. Then he turns over to Walter and shoots him in the stomach. But he's not dead. Walter just got shot in the stomach. Carver then says, okay, let's do this. And he starts to walk into the lodge with his people with guns at the ready. And that is the end of the episode. That is going to move into the season finale, which will be the next episode, of course, which is also going to focus on all groups, and it's going to be a fun one. It's going to be different than how it went in the game, though. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be predicting this next episode to be similar to what it was in the game. Expect it to be different. Not in complete ways, but don't expect it to be the same. It's just all I'm going to say. I mean, you know it's not going to be the same because what's going to happen is going to fill up the whole next episode, the finale, right? So, and what happened in the game lasted maybe 10 to 15 minutes at most. So expect this to be a lot longer and a lot more crazy, I guess you could say, than the game, which I'm excited for. Hopefully you guys are too. So I will see you guys in my next one. Peace out.